Welcome. We're going to start the City of Burlington City Council work session for Monday, November 26th at 4:30, the Thomas J. Smith Council Chambers. Due to the COVID-19 situation, public participation during the meetings is not allowed during work sessions. It must be by phone until further notice. We do have a couple council members on the phone, and City Hall is closed to the public. If you do want to listen in, public access during the meetings is phone number 646-749-3122, and this is meeting number 791-645-725. Now we're going to go ahead and move some of the discussion items ahead. We've got some people here that we can get them out quickly, so we'll go ahead and start with the fall CVB update with Chelsea LaRue.
Hey, Chelsea. How's that beautiful baby?
Hello. Chelsea LaRue, Executive Director of Greater Burlington Convention and Visitors Bureau. And just twice a year, I have to come and give you guys an update on where things are at, what we're working on at the CVB. So that's what I'm here for tonight. So we'll start with some good information. Our economic impact numbers are always a year behind based on how they are calculated. So the data we're looking at is from 2019. Des Moines County visitor expenditures were almost $149 million, and that was an increase over the year before at about $145. Tourism in Des Moines County supports over 1,080 jobs and brings in over $7.4 million in state taxes and $2.14 million in local taxes. And Des Moines County continues to sit about 13th out of all 99 counties in Iowa for visitor expenditure, so it's great news there. The state of Iowa totaled, visitor expenditures totaled over $9.3 billion. It was an increase of over 3%. And our increase for the year was 2.5, so just below the state average there. So it was good to see those numbers. But then COVID hit, and the tourism industry has been one of the absolute hardest hit industries due to COVID. The pandemic has resulted in over $402 billion in losses for the U.S. travel economy. The tourism industry is experiencing an economic impact 9 times worse than of 9/11, and we know 9/11 hit the industry very hard. And the continual depressed level of spending has caused a loss of $52.1 billion in federal, state, and local tax revenues. And industry experts are saying it'll be 2023 or 2024 before the tourism hospitality industry sees a full recovery. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but as I'll kind of outline some of the things we're going to be working on later on, but the tourism industry will be looked at as one of the leaders for the recovery effort. As soon as it is safe for travel again, it'll be our jobs to encourage that travel to help some of the other sectors of the economy recover. So we'll look at hotel-motel occupancy for the year compared to the last 3 years. The blue bar is 2020, and you'll see it's been a decrease almost all year. April was when we bottomed out at 29.5% occupancy, so that was rough to see those numbers. Right now, year-to-date, occupancy is about 41.5%, and that is down a little over 25% from 2019, same time frame. When we look at the top 10 Iowa communities, they're at 42.7, down about 30%, so we're right there, right on par with the way the rest of the state is performing. When we look at that in numbers, showing you 2019 versus 2020, kind of average what last night in Greater Burlington might have looked like. So in 2020, 347 rooms booked, which would have brought 694 visitors of an economic impact a little over 83,000 compared to those numbers there from 2019. So you do see that 25% decrease is there. But we have still seen positive requests for our community guides. A little over, almost 11,500 guides have been mailed out based on our ad placements that were all placed before COVID hit and our partnership with the State Tourism Office. So it has been reassuring to see those requests still coming in. We did have to change not being able to fulfill every request for a few months in there due to budget concerns, but we are back to being able to fulfill every request. And we have distributed to over 20 countries and 50 states this year. So we are still getting the guide out there. And our plan for 2021 is to maintain our normal schedule of releasing the new community guide right there at the first of the year and ordering the same amount, because we do feel people are still out there seeking information. When you look at how much time they're spending on the digital guide, over 6 minutes. Last year it was only a little over 3 minutes. So they're spending more time doing their research and definitely digging into the information and making sure they make a good decision before acting on coming for their travel here. Welcome Center visitation is extremely down. September was about 30% of our normal visitation, and July and August was about 50%. Those are normally our highest months. Once school started, visitation really did drop off, but that is normal for this time of year as well. But the Welcome Center was closed half of March, all of April, May, and June. We were able to reopen July 1st. And even though visitation numbers have been down, this 2020 has been our first year for trying the gift shop and having the store. We are still pleased with the sales that we're doing through the store, so that's positive and reassuring to see. Many people are still looking for the Iowa store and a lot of the products that Bonnie offered. So we're creating that list, and we'll slowly continue to add to the merchandise that we offer and adding that variety there. And I just want to say a huge kudos to the property maintenance team with the city. They have spent all summer trying to alleviate our pigeon problem and helping us have a presentable front door. So they've been wonderful to us. So some of the CVB strategy for 2021 is definitely working on that industry recovery, thinking outside the box. What are some additional marketing campaigns that we could do, as well as advocating at the state and federal levels to ensure that the resources and the aid is there for our industry partners and our industry members. And how can we spread the word? It's definitely all about road trips right now, so thinking maybe a little bit further than our normal marketing marketing target, and having people consider driving to Greater Burlington for their family road trip. We do have 7 boat dockings on the calendar for next summer, so we'll be excited to see those come to fruition. That is with the American Duchess, American Queen, and American Countess. And then continuing to work on the Welcome Center and adding the merchandise in there and learning the ropes of the store. One of the new kind of industry recovery pieces that we have recently launched is our We Live It, You'll Love It campaign. We have recruited 2 local families to go out and kind of experience Greater Burlington and help us showcase it to a potential visitor and somebody that might be looking at relocating to the area. So we're running ads on Facebook for the more middle-aged family, targeting that 40 to 55 age range. And then we're running ads on Instagram targeting that younger family, the 25 to 39 age range there. We launched this campaign right around the 1st of October, and it's already reached over 570,000 people, and we're seeing pretty decent engagement there as well. We're targeting Madison, Wisconsin, and Chicago, Illinois, because those 2 regions continue to have the most views on our website. And we're also targeting Mountain View, California, because that area has the most views of our digital community guide. So we're kind of testing those markets right now and seeing how well they perform. And this ad campaign will continue to run through 2021, and the families are going out and exploring right now, and we're they're creating little blog posts for us. And so once a visitor sees these ads, they can click through to read the blog and then request more information about our community as well. So those are kind of some of the highlights, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Chelsea? All right, I have one.
Okay.
I was really impressed with your web presence for selling merchandise. I mean, that
Thank
is
you.
a really, really nice page. If you're thinking Christmas gifts, anybody, T-shirts, memorabilia, check it out. It is top notch.
Thank you. Thank you. We did launch the online store about April. It's something we'd been wanting to do, but COVID definitely sped up that timeline there, and we're happy to have that piece available.
Thank you for the update, Chelsea.
Thank you.
We look
We
forward
appreciate
to
all you
next
do.
year so we can figure out what these numbers actually are going to look like.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be nice to have some recovery numbers in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We were gonna, do you have any other callers on the line?
Yep,
Okay.
so he'll get it on that. Doug did just get on.
Okay, so we're waiting for Doug Wells. He's gonna speak on the TAMA project.
He has his microphone muted, so he's ready to go on.
Okay.
Hello, Doug Wells here.
Hello, Doug.
Hey, Doug.
Hi, sorry, we had trouble logging on, but I think we're on now.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay,
You have the floor if you're ready, Doug.
okay, I'm ready, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So, can everyone see the sheet that says project schedule?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. I guess starting in, we've got three main components of the project. And we have the site and alley stabilization portion of the work. And we have been working with Meyer Construction on that. And we've finalized structurally how we're handling the existing walls. And then we're issuing the final documents on that on the 31st of October. And then we've given them some drawings to date. And then by November 15th, they're going to have bids back and plan to start work right away on that. And so our goal is having a start date of November 15th. And so then that gets that portion going and under construction. And we have to do that work before we do the footings and excavation on the main building. And then kind of the next component is the apartment portion of it. And on December 1, we're issuing the final construction documents for that portion of the work. And then on December 15th, we're receiving the bids. And on around December 22nd, they would start construction with excavation for the footings. And that places the completion date conservatively on the apartments at November 15th. And we would close out that portion of the building. And then we have a third component, which is the retail portion. And on January 19th, we received bids back on that. And then that work begins on November 17th, 2021, and is completed December 31, 2021. And all that work is the infill below the apartments on levels 2 and 3. So these different components, these three different components, the site and alley, the apartments, and the retail, allow us to work with the Davis-Bacon wage rates and IEDA, and Sarah Hecox has his schedule and is working on the wage rate determinations, which should fall in place before these bid dates. So in general, that is our schedule moving forward. In terms of the design of the project, it essentially has remained the same as what you've seen before, and the important component that happened was that the State Office of Historic Preservation became no longer involved with the project, and we're just able to work with the Burlington Historic Commission for approval. We've had meeting with them on 2 different occasions, and I think we're on the same page of how we're going about it, and IEDA is on board with what we have done there. So we see all that flowing well now. So with that, happy to see what questions you might have.
Thank you, Doug. Staff, do you have any questions? Robert? Matt? How about on the line? John, any questions for Doug? It looks like Jim's got a couple.
I guess the only thing that I would check on from a staff perspective dealing with this, Nick and
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thanks, John.
Nick and Eric, have you had any conversations with Doug in regards to how Alliance Transformer is going to work in the back corner with that demo and building project? So I guess the one thing that I want to make sure is that everyone's on board, making sure that we're keeping that as part of the discussion about how that transformer is going to work moving forward. I know that we had a little bit of discussion with Alliant just in terms of how they're going to locate those transformers, and we have been trying to see if there's a chance or possibility of getting some of the overhead lines buried in that corridor. That'll be a project that we're going to be proposing as we move forward into over the next couple of years, and just wanting to make sure that that's getting coordinated, and that Doug, that you're aware that that's something that we're trying to work on.
Yes, I can address a couple things on that. Right now, our transformer position where it was sitting for the first TAMA project remains the same, and that allows us to attach to an underground feed for the transformer, and that position before was worked out with Alliant, and that still is our intent. Now, I think the transformer that was there was damaged, and a new one gets installed, but the idea of the design and the feeds for the transformer are they come down the pole and go underground, and in the future they could be hooked up to the underground electric feed when the overhead is removed. But it's our goal and desire to have the overhead gone for sure, and just have it ready to go so that that can happen when the Alliance can do the rest of the infrastructure.
Okay, that sounds good. I just want to make sure that we're all going to be on the same page moving forward there to make sure that that's done in a way that makes that whole corridor work successfully. So, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions for Doug? Hearing none. Thank you, Doug. Sorry you had trouble getting on the call.
Oh, thank you for your patience. It finally worked.
Yeah. That's technology for you.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you. Were there any?
Okay, thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, and we would like to do another update maybe in a month or 6 weeks, and or whenever you want.
That sounds great. Let's do that in 6 weeks. We'll just put you on the schedule. We look forward to hearing
Okay,
your updates.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you much.
Thank you, Doug. Are there any other discussion items we wanted to move forward, Jim?
I don't think so.
Okay. I don't know if there's anybody else holding on the line. Okay, we'll go ahead and start working through the proposed regular agenda then. So first on, we have a public hearing for the consideration of the sale of property locally known as 224 South 8th Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Eric?
Property we acquired through the abandoned building program, corner of 8th and Etna Street, is a little unique from most of ours. Generally acquire single-family homes. This is a multi-plex with 4 one-bedroom and 1 efficiency apartment. Does have to meet our normal standards for occupancy. It's the property spec sheet. 2-story home. Need cleanup, removal of items, plumbing upgrades, electrical upgrades, patch repair walls and ceilings, window repair replacement, floor replacement, siding and foundation repair. Do have a current bid of $500, have had multiple others interested in the property, so anticipate receiving another bid or individuals attending the council meeting. But yeah, similar conditions do require rehab of the property, meeting housing standards prior to any occupancy and prior to transfer of deed.
Thanks, Eric. That's going to make somebody a lovely home, and I see some historical features of that home I think are quite appealing myself. Moving on, Resolution 2, all bids for the 2020 Tiger Grant roadway improvements, Main Street and Jefferson Street.
So you notice a change in title from what we were expecting this resolution to be. We received bids on October 20th. We received 1 bid. That bid was in total amount. As you remember, there was 5 different divisions. 1 through 3 were the base bid, and then 4 and 5 were alternatives. The total bid was $21 million and change. The bid exceeds the number declared by the city as the max allowable. This was determined in the breakdown of the Tiger Grant funds that we had available, and that was at $12,750,000. So we have to reject bids due to regulations with federal funds. You're not allowed to award bid anything over 110% of what the engineer's estimate is, and we simply don't have the funds for that type of a project. So upon rejection, we're going to have to meet with the consultants and figure out where we go from here. I had a meeting last week, and then I have a meeting again tomorrow to see what we need to cut out, rework, and then go back out for bid. We're allowed to go back out to bid. We had planned the riverfront for January. That will probably be pushed back just because of the timing of what we are expecting for this to go out to, what this will be to go back out to bid. Looking maybe like a March. I know that throws off some construction schedules, but I think to be able to accomplish the project that we're probably going to have to look at several months to kind of iron out some details. What happened? Why didn't people bid? Did we receive a bid so over top of what we had for estimates? we had 5 addendums in the month's period of time on a project that had 500 pages of specifications. So I think there was maybe some lack of clarity on what people were bidding on, some unknown risk ultimately. But all I can tell you is that we're going to sit down and try and figure out where we need to make appropriate cuts to parts of the project that we bid out. The inflow planters, I think, are a costly item that caused a little bit of confusion. I can tell that based on some of the questions that came through. But ultimately, on whatever we think we need to cut out or change or bid as an alternative, another division, we're going to have to come back in front of you to reapprove the plans and specifications. So we'll be working on it, I guess is what I can tell you. But
You kind of already touched a little bit on why we only got one bid, but does it make any sense to go back out to bid in the spring on this and
that's what I'm saying.
with the existing specs and plan?
I think you have to change something.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not going to get $8 million off of some more time and clarification. So we're going to have to change
Well, three
parts
or
of the
more
bid.
alternative. I mean, there's 4 million in alternative bids on there that we wouldn't do, but, right?
Pretty significant chunks of project that we had talked about accomplishing, though, especially on Jefferson Street. So,
Okay.
Thanks, Nick. Yep. Okay, moving on, resolution approving the 28E agreement concerning public safety, emergency communication services, and cost sharing in Des Moines County, Iowa. And who's on that one? Jim.
Since I wrote the cover memo for it. So there have been several discussions about making some modifications to the 28E over the last couple of years. And a lot of it had to do with how does funding work for this entity. There are some differences of opinion about whether the funding should continue on a per capita basis as it has been in the past, or move to more of a county-wide levy through the Emergency Management Commission. There, you can go to counties all across the state and find areas that do it both ways. You can find areas that do it completely different ways. But this certainly does clarify or clear up some of the issues that we've had in the past in terms of, is there a double billing that's going on in some areas where you're seeing residents pay a portion under their county levy on the general levy that had happened in previous years, as well as paying for it through the city tax. What will happen with this is, you look at this is an agreement that goes into place next year, July 1, 2021. It's a 5-year agreement. It has built within it the option to renew for an additional 5 years if all parties unanimously agree to renew under the same terms. That's a change to the structure. Other structure, in fact, that was included under Section 4, the duration. Section 5 has a fairly significant change in terms of composition of the DESCOM Control Board. The DESCOM Control Board, the main oversight board, will now be the Emergency Management Commission, which is made up of mayors of communities across the county, as well as county representation. In the past, we had representatives, voting representatives from, say, West Burlington, from Des Moines County, and then one additional voting member that represented several communities across the county. That structure is a fairly significant change, but makes sense given the fact that the other change that is in the significant change in the contract is under item 7, finance, where it does clarify that the Emergency Management Commission, pursuant to it's a chapter code of the Iowa Code, Section 29C 17-2A, will implement a countywide levy to cover the costs of the DESCOM. With those changes in mind, it does impact how our operation goes. You know, we currently, in this current year, we have budgeted $693,000 to cover our portion of the costs of DESCOM. As we go into next budget year, we won't have to have that proportional portion of the DESCOM budget as part of our revenues and expenditures. We pay for that expenditure solely out of the general fund, general levy. Means that we have the ability to lower our overall property tax levy by, well, this last year it would have been, or for the current year, it would have been a little over 89 cents, 89.628 cents per thousand evaluation to come up with that 693,000. We should be in a position this next year, as we go into the budget season, to be looking at a levy reduction from the 1633 that we're currently at down to $15.44. I don't see any factors, at least specifically in this next year's budget, that should have an impact on our ability to do that. We should have the flexibility to make it work with our ongoing operations and see that kind of reduction done, given that we're going to have that expenditure go away. But your approval tonight, and I think the county's already approved this agreement, and I'm not sure if any of the other entities have. You know, I'm not sure about the others, but when we had gone through the original voting process to bring this forward to all the entities in the county, the only one that hadn't been voting in favor of it had been the county. So having them come on board and approve it gives us some pretty good confidence that we'll be able to get this moving forward with all parties agreeing to it.
Sweet.
Any questions?
John, you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. It's great that we finally got this resolved. So, yeah, let's make sure we get a good vote on that next week.
Everybody else good? Robert? Matt? Good. Okay. Moving on. Under proposed consent agenda, do I read all those, Jim? No, I don't need to. That's just the routine stuff, right? Okay.
We run through it.
I run through it real
Yep.
quick.
Go through each item one at a time.
Oh, okay. I was thinking I could skip that part.
Yeah. All right, so as we move through this next section, the first item on there, the nuisances, you typically, they're there for your review. If you have a question about one of them, let us know. Otherwise, we would move on typically to the next item on there and have a presentation done.
Okay. So resolution approving final acceptance and final payment and release of retention monies for the 2019 HMA street resurfacing project. Nick.
The resolution would approve final payment of $2,600 and then release of retentions of $58,000 to WL Miller. This is the 2019 HMA project, which if you remember, we let that project later in the summer. The contractor had started some of the work in fall of 19, but then we did a fairly significant change order in this spring, and it involved quite a bit more additional work up in the North Hill area. This is taking a little while to close out. We had some historical markers in the roadway that we had to have certified, and so before we could close out the project, we had to make sure those were properly recertified. This was let at a project of $1.18 million. We had a negative quantity adjustment, so when we estimated there'd be more asphalt put down than really was. And then we had a $5,200 change order, bringing the as-built price to $1.176 million. Engineering costs are attributed to that at 14%. And typically, we do this project where we bid it with the ADA compliance ramps built into it. As you remember, we're doing that as a separate project. So we're using general obligation funds out of the RR&R program. So that's how that's paid for. So I recommend approval.
Okay. Questions?
The ADA That project's still ongoing, right?
Yep, it's currently in the process. I don't know how much work they've gotten done to date. I know they were, same contractors working on Central Street, and then they moved up to the North Hill.
Okay.
We gave an end date on that for some flexibility, because that was one of the struggles when we first originally let it, was we wanted it done in a working days. We kind of changed that a little bit just to try and get a little more flexibility and a little bit better bids.
Okay. Nick, you can probably hang out up there. Next one is resolution approving final acceptance and final payment and release of retention monies for the 2019 Lewis Street Sewer Repair Project.
So this resolution would issue final payment of $57,682, and then release retentions after acceptance, 30 days, $10,000 to Four Seasons Excavation. This project is just off of Main Street on Lewis Street. We have a pretty significant hill and slope there as part of the combined system, and we had a collapse in the sewer line. This was not a planned or budgeted project, but it came out of the miscellaneous, as we call it, miscellaneous, which is really mainline sewer repair. It was led at $175,000. There was quantity adjustment, which meant there was more dirt work and some extra pipe to be laid. And then we had a change order of $12,000. Brought the final price to $217,000. So fortunately, projects like this keep to chip away at some of our sewer funds. You don't like to have to do these, but with the system as our age, they'll crop up, so.
Yep, it's inevitable. Any questions? Everybody good? Okay, moving on. Resolution approving final acceptance, final payment, and release of retention monies for the 2020 West Avenue and Gear Avenue Dowell Bar Project retrofit. I flipped that around a little bit. But
The resolution would issue final payment of $18,000 and change to Iowa Civil, and then release $22,000 in retainage. This was a shared project with West Burlington, where we did a Dowell Bar retrofit along with the diamond grind. The original contract was $414,000. With some quantity adjustment and change orders, it came to $442,000. Those portions are split up, however. West Burlington's portion is $118,000, so we'll receive payment from them. Upon final payment, we'll issue an invoice for payment, bringing our dollar figure to $324,465, plus engineering is built into that as well. So we went in there and took out the hippity skippity out of the panels, and I think it did a
Said it,
fairly
Robert.
good job. I had to bring it up one last time because if it's not there anymore, we can't talk about it. I think other than the eastbound lane on West Avenue closest to the intersection at Gear, it did a pretty remarkable job of improving the ride on that road. Plus it helped bring up some stability. So we tried to get a little bit of an asphalt lift on that eastern portion to try and make it as smooth as possible, but it just wasn't in the cards to be able to get that change order approved. It was too much money and too late in the year to try and get something done on that. The ride is perfectly fine. It is much improved over what it was previously. And actually, you can tell the impact by driving north on Gear after you get through the division intersection. That section was nowhere near as bad as the ride on the portion that we fixed, but it just shows you kind of the comparison of what it is now. So I think
Much
this is a great
better.
project. I was a little nervous, I'll be
Yeah.
honest. I thought it could be really good, but I didn't know if it would take it all out. So I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. So.
Markedly improved. Any questions? Anybody? John, you okay? Okay, number 5, resolution approving the purchase. Okay, thank you. I know there's such a delay. I probably should count to 20, right? Resolution approving the purchase.
Don't call me,
Okay,
don't call me, I'll tell you when I have an opinion, that way it makes it easier for you.
okay, that works. Thanks, John. Resolution approving the purchase of SCBA systems and equipment for the Burlington Fire Department.
This resolution basically is to be in combination with the AFG grant that we applied for and got for the SABA systems. The breakdown was shown on the information pack that we gave. The fire department recommends accepting the Sandry Fire proposal for $316,889. There are several other bids that may be lower, but we did a test and trial and had the personnel actually work with them in a fire trailer simulator, and with the features and some of the things that came with the units, their suggestion was this works better for our department. So that's why we recommend that we go with the Sandry proposal. The budget part of it, the AFG grant will end up covering $287,727.27, with the remainder coming out of the local option sales tax funds.
Okay. Questions?
questions?
Anybody? Thank you. I have a hard time not saying scuba when I see that. Number 6, a resolution approving the City of Burlington, Iowa 2020 Leadership Goal Setting Executive Summary. Jim?
So this is a summary document that Elizabeth Hanson prepared based off of your goal-setting session. And it kind of is a review of the session that you held here a couple of weeks ago. It lays out at the front, beginning at page 3, sort of in just the steps that you went through and you know, they included things like going through your accomplishments over the last couple of years, taking a review of the priorities that we had 2 years ago, the last goal-setting session, and seeing how much progress we had made on them, looking at issues and opportunities that face the city and some potential solutions moving forward. Probably the big crux of it is coming up with what our goals program is as we do move forward. And section F kind of does, the attachment F gives near the back gives a pretty good look at what some of the different priorities were that as a group, after taking a look at what we had accomplished, what we still had left to do, and things that you had identified and staff had identified as things that could potentially be worked on over the next 2 years, how to sift through those. There were 3 different ways to sift through them. First, when you look at page 21, there is a list of, I'm sorry, it's a list. We came up with a list in attachment E, which is beginning in 18. You had a list of 53 items that you're taking a look at to figure out what are the priorities. Well, you can't do all of that. So as we did that, we had different voting sessions that went through that process. We saw the department heads come up with what their listed items were that they saw as based off of those 57, what they recommended working on. We saw the community, that was on page 23, and if you looked on that, you can look at that, the number of votes to figure out what the top 5 items were, and they're listed the top 6 because of a tie for that fourth, 5th, and 6th one were all tied. That was the staff's list of the recommended action items. The following page, 24, was when we went out to the community and had 180 some votes on what the recommendations were for priorities for the next 2 years. The top 5 items there, because that's what we were trying to get to, is top 5 items, were very similar to what the staff had. And then if you went back and looked at the voting on page 22, which was your own voting, you saw the top goals that you identified were fairly similar to both the staff and the community. Now, there isn't a complete match on them, but I think that this represents and shows where you've taken a lot of time to put perspective into both what the department heads had to say and what the community had to say as you, as a group, tried to figure out what do we feel are the most important goals to work on for the next couple of years as a community. Out of the discussion, I know that Elizabeth tried to get you to 5 goals. And based off of the discussion that you had at the goal-setting session, page 25 kind of reflects the thought of the 5 goals that she wanted to keep you down to, limited down to, and there's a reason why she does that. One, there's not enough time nor dollars to do everything, and it's a desire to try to see you get focused on let's get through a couple of targeted items while we have this time, while we're working together as a group. But I also have in here the next tier of goals. These were things that you as a group didn't want to lose track of, that you had identified as things that you wanted to work on as well. So that I have them broke down into 2 tiers, kind of to reflect that kind of a mesh or marrying between the idea of you got the high priority that that you have the time and attention to focus on, but there's a recognition that you have other goals that you'd like to accomplish if it's possible too as you move forward. And really that page 25 is my addition to what Elizabeth had to offer, trying to get some sense of a balance between what she was trying to get you to have and where you all were communicating at the work session, wanting to be able to have somehow not lose track of those other goals that you'd identified. And, you know, behind that, you can see how Elizabeth tried to just put some reminders out there in the final pages here of what the roles are of different parties here in the community, the council, the mayor, department heads, the manager, and the public. We all have a role to play working together to make Burlington a great place to live, work, and play. And if we lose track of any part of that, we don't function well. And making sure that we allow each role, each part of that to function as it's supposed to by code, and how we, you know, how you work together as a group. With that, it's there for you, your recommendation or for your approval. There are steps to move forward, developing an action plan, which I can get started on, but unfortunately is going to be probably a little bit of Nick, and then whoever gets hired into the role of city manager moving forward to really try to help implement over the course of the next 2 years. But we will have some of the, based off of what are identified here as priority goals, we'll have things identified in the CIP to try to address several of these topics. Any thoughts or?
One of the things I found really remarkable is when we were doing this whole process, and Elizabeth kept saying she was in awe that we had completed so many items, that our list of completed items was 178 items, and
133.
I thought it was 178.
Well, we can exaggerate.
My number's better than your number, so let's roll with mine. But anyway, she kept reiterating it was the highest number of completed items that she had ever seen in her role as a consultant. So I thought that was kudos to Burlington.
I would say that the one thing that if we could have done it differently, I would have liked to have had discussion on some of the topics that we picked. Instead of just listing my top 5 with no discussion, I would rather kind of picked at a few of them to see where everybody was coming from and what they were thinking. Yeah, and I want an attainable goal. So some things might have made my list, but I know that financially or, you know, as far as what we can, effort we can put towards it, if it would happen or not. So I would say the one thing I would change about that is maybe a little more discussion about why we're going to pick those as our top 5, and rather than just doing a survey, so to speak.
I agree with you, Robert.
What survey?
Narrow it down
Well, I
to,
mean, we put our top
Yeah.
5 in a piece
So-
of paper and handed it off.
You've worked with, Elizabeth did it a little differently than what Jeff Schott has done it in the past, but you've worked with Jeff for, well, the city council, not you all personally, but the city council has worked with Jeff Schott prior to this session for probably 10 review, goal-setting sessions, probably close to 20 years you'd worked with them. I don't know if Jeff has been there quite that long, but I know the Institute of Public Affairs has been doing it for at least that long. His process, when he would have gotten to that list of items that you had to choose from, instead, you all had 5 to choose from and write the 5 numbers that you had to choose. he would have had the list of items on the wall on a piece of paper and given each of you 5 dots and clarified with you, you've got 5 dots. You can put them where you want, but the top ones are the ones that you're going to have as focus items. So he probably set that up a little bit better for you before you voted, but he also did not have a spot for you to lobby. So just to keep in mind, this is very similar to the process that's been done over time, although I think that she probably didn't do as good a job setting it up for you to realize where you're heading on that.
So I think the result of what we got would have been probably the same. We ended up in the same place. I didn't find as much value in the process with Elizabeth as we did with Jeff. Having been through both, obviously I think Jeff, like you said, set it up better. This isn't a meeting to critique her, but just moving forward, I think there was better value in the previous course. I do remember some portion of Jeff's presentation allowed us to have conversation about ideas that we had as a council. Especially that was important with the new council back then, because they'd only been on here a few weeks, to kind of feel each other out. I think that was something we missed with
I think that he might
Elizabeth.
have done a spot there as part of that process where you talked about, where you gave the chance if you had any other items to
And
bring up.
I think that was what was really missing. That allowed us as a council to kind of throw out ideas and just kind of shoot from the hip. And I think that was an important part that was missing. Again, we're not here to critique Elizabeth. I didn't find the value in this course, but I think at the end of the day, we would have ended up with the exact same list of goals. So
I think you have a pretty good list of goals. Well, and really the fact that you have pretty good consistency between what your list is, what the public's list was, and what the department heads was. There's a lot of overlap there. Now, I know there's been folks who are upset that some of their items didn't make it. Well, that's part of your role, is to find what's the right balance and to try to, balance out what different perspectives and make sure that you have us moving forward on a good footing.
I think more importantly, it's good for council and staff and citizens of the community to understand that while the top 5 things are the top 5 things, there are 25 things that, if presented an opportunity over the next 2 to 5 years, we're able to work on those, that we'll do that. So it doesn't mean that because it's not a top 5 thing that it's just scrapped completely. It just means that it's not going to be the primary focus over the next 18 months or so.
And I do agree that Robert's comments have merit. 2 of our council members are fairly new, 9 months on the job, and sometimes they don't thoroughly maybe have an understanding. I think goal-setting process, both for the citizens and for staff, there's an awful lot of assuming that takes place. Like I noticed for the citizens, there was 0 that voted for the facade project, and I'm thinking to myself, that is a name that a lot of citizens, they're not really sure what that means. So without any definition, I'm not sure they really know what it means to get behind it. Likewise, some of the council people, some of the notions and ideas and goals were fairly new to them, hard for them to really 100% get behind it and make it a top 5 if they don't 100% understand it. So even 10 or 15 minutes for us to brainstorm and talk about those ideas before we placed our final vote, I feel could have had some merit. So, are we ready? We've exhausted this one, ready to move on?
Are you tired, Jim?
Okay. Resolution 7, obligating funds from the Burlington Crossing TIF rebate subfund to the city's urban renewal tax revenue fund for appropriation to the payment of annual appropriation tax increment rebate payments due to be paid in the succeeding fiscal year. Ooh, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, I know, what does that mean? So these are the TIF rebate agreement developments that we're in with. You'll see the next 1, 2, 3, 4 resolutions are all the same. Those are our 4 TIF rebate agreements that are already in place, signed. What we have to do every year is annual appropriate how much money that we will rebate back to them. So basically, if you'll see on the resolutions, the dollar amounts of those 4 resolutions have X's in them because I'm waiting on the estimates from the Des Moines County Auditor's Office. They're waiting on the rollback amount from the state. So last year, the rollback came October 21st. So the state's a little behind on getting that number out. Cheryl from the auditor's office assured me that once she gets the rollback, she'll stop what she's doing and get the estimates, because we're all waiting on these. And hopefully we'll have them for next Monday so we can approve. These amounts then go on my TIF certification that's due to the county in December. And that's where we draw down the TIF funds, the TIF debt we have, the rebates, that all gets certified at the county auditor's level. And then that's how we get paid these amounts. So basically, these development agreements, these are companies that are paying the property tax and that we've agreed to rebate a certain amount back to them. And you'll see in the resolution, there's the limits, there's only so many years, and that's how we track it. So if you have any other questions.
Okay. Everybody good?
I'll walk through them actually a little bit.
You do, okay.
Okay.
I kind of want to walk through the dollars,
Okay.
because I like to walk through the dollars.
But we don't know.
Jim
the
loves to
dollars.
walk through what?
Well, I would just want to do a
$2.
review for these for folks so they know which projects are which on this.
Okay.
You know, the Manor property was a 12-year development agreement with a maximum that they could potentially receive of $10 million over those 12 years. 6 years, 100% rebate of all taxes paid, then 6 years of 80%. The first year where we actually paid out taxes to them was fiscal year 19. The first 2 years, that was only a partial year, so their first 2 years is significantly lower, but the total was $290,000 for those first 2 years. The FY '22, the best estimate that I could give to you right now, based off of what's come in the past, would be around $300,000. So over a 12-year period, they're probably not going to be getting up to that $10 million figure. The next resolution was a spec building that the chamber or the partnership had built out across the street from where Silgan is now. And that they'd been trying to sell that for several years and weren't able to do that. We helped them with the TIF project to be able to provide enough incentive for them to be able to sell that building, get it out of their hands. It was a maximum $500,000 that we were going to provide in tax repayments over 10 years. We did that project back in 2012. That was a 10-year, 100% rebate. Fiscal year 15 was the first taxes paid, so that's going to be coming off the books here in a couple of years.
What's the revenue on that? What are the taxes been on that?
They are we're going to be close to $40,000 this year. Next year, I don't know if it'll be up to the 45, but that's kind of what I put as an approximate. They haven't quite paid 40,000 off of it yet. They're 6 years in. The total taxes that have been rebated through that has been 158,000. So they're probably going to get maybe another, maybe 200,000 more, probably just a tad under that. The next agreement that's on there, Park West, we haven't had any payments go through yet with that development, the housing development. This first year, well, this year we're supposed to have some that'll come through. So the current fiscal year is the first year on that. It's a 10-year rebate, $350,000. This next year, my guess would be maybe $8,000.
And that project's 3 years in.
This will be FY '22 will be for the second year of taxes collected out of the 10. The Weingard TIF, item number 10, was the old Fairway Center. We entered that agreement back in 2012. It was a maximum repayment of $1,380,000. It was set to pay back 75% of the taxes collected for the first 5 years, and then 50% for the final 5 years. Fiscal year 15 was the first year that we paid on that. Through the first 6 years, they've received $673,000. And the current year, for fiscal '22, which is what this resolution is for, is maybe will be $170,000 if they if they keep having the growth, and I don't remember when properties came on out there to know when those are gonna, how that'll grow, but they're most likely not gonna get up to that 1.3 million by the time they're done. That'll extend through fiscal '24 as well. And I think that Stephanie kind of covered the item 11. We basically well, we didn't. That's a little bit different from those first 4 TIF rebate agreements. This is we have to structure it as an internal loan in order to do the rebate process. And again, it's one of those things that we kind of follow what the attorneys tell us to do. This is a way to get the TIF fund to reimburse the general fund for a portion of the costs that are associated with running it. The costs that we see that gets associated with it are primarily with Bob Jostin, but it also accounts for a portion of Eric's time and my position's time on dealing with different projects as we look at potential structures of deals. And we used the $20,000 figure. We were using a much higher figure several years in the past. I wanted it to be enough that we're trying to cover a portion of our costs, but low enough that we don't have to worry from year to year, are we actually spending it? We're well above that on an annual basis, so.
Just to add real quick, so I do a recap, just like Jim went through, where it shows you what year we're on and what we've paid to date. I did send it to one of our website administrators to update it on our website just today, so I don't know if it's updated right now, but it should be in a couple days. But it's under the Finance Department tab, and you'll go under Urban Renewal Development Agreements, and there's a PDF there you can click on, and it will recap all what Jim just kind of went over, what we've paid them, you know, the max amount, what year we're in. So that'll, if you just love to look at the numbers again, so. I'm gonna stay here because I'm the next one.
Okay, any questions? Is that a question or a computer adjustment?
No,
You
I'm
good?
good.
Okay. So moving on. Which number are you on? 12? Okay. Resolution approving the submittal of limited English proficiency plan, rather, for the Burlington Urban Service Transit System. Steph?
So currently we have, they call it an LEP plan, and it's part that goes into our Title VI Transit Management Program that you guys approved about, I don't know, it's been a month or two ago now. So the state came back and said, hey, you should look at your plan. And so we kind of looked at some of the other transit systems, and their plan was much more expansive than ours. So this is just expanding the plan. We had one. This one just adds a lot more information, how we're administering it, why we're doing it. So next time we approve our Title VI Transit Management Program, this plan will be in there, but we felt it was necessary to get it approved by the council now. We'll resubmit it to the state, and it'll just, in the future, be part of that. So if you have any questions.
Is this something that would typically be done by your new transit person?
Well, I'm the Title VI coordinator. It's kind of more of an HR role.
Okay.
But, I mean, yeah, he'll be able to definitely help me. We do this Title VI program together. Half the report, Nick has put together the information, the other half I put together. So, yeah, it'll definitely, he'll probably be able to do more research, than Nick and I have probably had time to do sometimes. So, but, yeah.
And as far as carrying out any of the needs that are developed from the program, so ultimately it's helping people that don't speak English get the ability to provide rides. So on the action part of it, definitely the transit manager, but this plan development stuff is kind of a coordinated effort.
Okay, thank you. Everybody good? Okay. Number 13, resolution reminding rescinding the sale of property, parcel number 16-17-228-043, located north of the property locally known as 726 Blackhawk Boulevard, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Eric?
When we installed sewer for the Parkview subdivision. This portion of lot came with that, or came with this, the entire lot when we acquired it. When we installed sewer, this portion of lot was approved for sale to 726 Blackhawk Boulevard. There is an easement over the entire portion for sewer. Since that time, unfortunately, one of the spouses passed away, and the remaining individual does not desire ownership to maintain it. They felt that the lot would have been graded sooner. We had discussion with them that when 707 was developed, that lot would be graded a little further and seeded, which it has been now, but they've just decided they don't want to maintain it and don't desire ownership of it. We had conversation with the property owner at 707, Shaka Khan, who's building a house there, and they would seek ownership to that lot. It's landlocked. Those are really the only two owners that could have it. So this sale did receive a notice from her stating she does not intend to record the deed and does not want ownership of it. So this would rescind that sale, and then we can resale it at the following council meeting to the owner of 707 Shaka Khan.
Did they already pay for it?
It was a $1 in exchange for the easement for the sewer. It's really no use. It's just a slope back area. It's something we don't want to maintain or retain ownership of, so we'd probably recommend just selling it for that same amount to the 707.
Okay, everybody good? Questions? Okay, number 14, there's a set date for public hearing, November 16th, 2020. Consideration of sale of property, parcel number, one we just read, 16-17-228-043, located south of the property known as 707 Shaka Khan Drive, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Okay. So moving on to discussion items. Treasurer's report, Stephanie.
So in the packet, there was still two treasurer's reports. We have one as of June 30th, 2020. We're still calling it preliminary because the auditors are still in the midst of doing the audit. I think I'm 99% sure this will be the final one. They are not finding any adjustments to be made. But until we kind of button up the audit, we just keep it as preliminary. So that one's in there. And then September's 30th treasurer's report. Again, this one, you know, general fund's going to show a negative because their property taxes come in October. And then that's when we get our big property tax amount, which will boost that fund up. Other than that, we still have, you know, the projects that are causing deficits due to timing of drawdowns and loans. Finally, we're getting some movement in the FEMA. As of September, we're still in the whole $863,000. We've received some small amounts of money, but the projects are finally coming through my desk, is moving forward. So, and I know we've kind of sent everything from the auditorium to our insurance company, so we should be getting another check from them. So hopefully in the next couple months, we can start digging ourselves out of that hole. We'll get some reimbursement. So other than that, I don't think anything's out of the ordinary unless anybody has any questions.
Questions?
Nope.
I'm going to point out two things on that report. As she mentioned, that miscellaneous clearing fund, the flood account, at $863,000 in a hole. We'll get reimbursements on a lot of that between insurance and FEMA, but you know, I don't know that we have a great number yet in terms of what our net cost is going to be, but probably a couple of $100,000 is something to keep in mind that we're going to have to transfer over to balance that account out before all is said and done. So the general fund is going to have that hit. Now, this is a year where we're going to have plenty of financial flexibility to accommodate it, but it is something out there that we're going to have to address. And I lost track of what the other one was, so that's your bonus.
Okay, everybody good? So discussion item number 4, city council meeting date and time. And Jim?
I really don't have anything to put out here, just to be able to set this up for you. We had a request from Linda to have a consideration of either alternative days, alternative times, or a combination thereof. That's completely a matter of what do you want to do with times. You can certainly, that's under your purview, you can make a change to how you want to structure when those meetings occur. There have been several changes over the years. I think all have been on moving it to different times on Monday nights, sometimes moving it later, sometimes moving it earlier, changing how communications with the council works from the public. There have been several changes, but it's up to you. What can you come to an agreement for what's the best time to try to accommodate your needs and the needs of the public?
Yeah, Jim's correct. It was brought to my attention that sometimes the council meetings aren't always user-friendly for people that want to run for council. So in order to be more inclusive for people that have to work and have family commitments, I thought maybe switching to an alternate day or at least exploring an alternate time might be a benefit for future people to serve on council and get more people to run.
So what were your thoughts? What were you thinking about being a proposal?
I know
guess?
Mondays are really, really tough for people. They're juggling a lot. There's a lot on people's plates on Mondays. So I was looking to explore maybe an alternate day.
Like what
Your
day?
thoughts? Not Wednesday, because people have a lot of commitments and they get involved in sports and stuff. I don't know.
I mean, I think, I'm not opposed to I think having the conversation is gonna be great. I thought about this a little bit this week, and I feel like any day or time we choose, it could be a conflict for any
For
potential
somebody.
person.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't have a problem with Mondays, I don't have a problem with Tuesdays. I think Fridays would be terrible.
Yeah.
But as far as timing goes, I'm not willing to do anything that's gonna keep city staff here beyond the time that we already expect them to be here. I mean, for me personally, Tuesdays at noon, that'd be great. We're making a lunch meeting. I mean, we can have it at 9 a.m. on Fridays, but I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, whatever we end up doing needs to be okay and accommodate the staff. They put the packet together, and they need to have plenty of opportunity and time to do that. But I'm all ears for any suggestions. I don't know that I'd necessarily be in favor for pushing the meeting back, because again,
Sorry, man.
Eric's not gonna go home and hang out with his family for an hour and a half and then turn around and come back to a meeting and sit here for 3 hours, just so that we can push it back, to accommodate any particular individual.
My schedule personally is very, very flexible. I
As is-
know a
as
lot
is
of
mine.
working men and women, it is not.
Yeah.
So, and I know the last election we had, we didn't have too many people running. It just,
But then the election before that, we had probably the most that we've ever had run, so I think it just comes and goes
Yeah,
in cycles.
I would agree with that. The last election, the one we came in on, guys, we had probably the most
16,
people running,
yeah.
14 candidates, and they
Yeah.
all knew the time and dates of the meeting. I talked to Kathleen extensively about it, and it would put a real hurt on her office to try to keep up as we move the date, for sure. I mean, you know, she moves literally mountains of paperwork through that office to be able to accommodate our city meetings, work sessions and stuff. And I don't want to put staff under more duress. I don't really want to meet any later, because I don't want staff taking more time away from their families. I know that's part of their job, but I'm fine with when the meeting is, because there is something every night. You know, the only thing I could see would be a work session. You could move it a half hour if you wanted to, but we really don't have citizen input on work sessions, so you wouldn't really move that. We only have people that, when they have an issue, come to a work session. So I don't see benefit of moving that timeline.
I think,
In fact, it used to be work sessions for 3:30 in the afternoon. So I'm fine with where we're at now. Like, you know, we can have a discussion about it, but I don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction and change where we're at. And it would, if there's a study somewhere that says, hey, Monday night's better for everybody than Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, great. I don't think it's out there. If it was, every retailer in America would pay $1 billion for it. So. That's just my 2 cents. I'll shut up now.
So since everybody else had something to say, I would say that the one thing that I might throw out there is that school board they have their meetings on Mondays as well. So there's a conflict for anybody that's involved with both the school and city government. But if I would want to change, it would be for selfish reasons, not because it would be good for everybody else. I do know that 4:30 is harder for me to make than 5 or 5:30 because of my work schedule. A lot of times I'm scrambling to get here, which, just me getting into a routine is hard because I cover everybody's vacations and time off. So a lot of times I don't know what assignment I'm going to have and how flexible my schedule is going to be. But I would say that if I was to make any change at all, I would probably just do a flat 5 across so that we don't have a 4:30 and a 5:30 in alternating weeks. I would think for consistency's sake that a 5 o'clock meeting time would be easier to keep track of than checking my schedule on my calendar every week. But again, that would probably be for selfish reasons. But if that's something the staff is interested in, then we can have a discussion later. But I think for now, we can probably leave it the way it is unless someone has a more compelling reason.
Yeah, my suggestion, unless somebody has an idea that I haven't thought of, it would be to leave it the way that it is. I think the reason we do a 4:30 work session right now is because they typically run quite a bit longer than the council meetings themselves. We have more presentations. We do walk through the consent agenda in more depth, which adds that time. So that's why we start earlier, so we can get over a little bit earlier. I think, to John's point, we don't really allow a lot of public input at the work session. I think the benefit of a 5:30 council meeting is those are the meetings that we do allow public input. And I think people are normally in a non-COVID environment are make themselves more readily available and like to participate in their city government more, which is why we have that 5:30, because it's more accommodating to them. A lot of those folks get off at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Coming straight here is probably not very accommodating, but going home or picking up kids and taking care of them and then coming here is probably a little bit easier. So I haven't heard anything to suggest that we absolutely need to change it. But again, maybe somebody's got an idea.
But I'm glad we're having this discussion, though. I see the beauty for both points. I liked your noon idea, Matt, actually.
I would love a new meeting.
I'm a morning
But-
person. These night meetings are hard for me, but
I think, if you were to poll the people on the council, that would be difficult for John. I know it would be difficult for Bill because they gotta get our students.
Now, a new meeting wouldn't be difficult for me, but it's going to be difficult for just about any citizen to show up and go to a new meeting because they're never only an hour. I've got flex, thanks to my employer, I knew that when I took the council position, I knew I had the flexibility in their back to be able to go to meetings. So a new meeting would work for me, but I just don't see how if a meeting at 5:30 or 4:30 in the afternoon doesn't work for a citizen, there's no way a 3-hour work session works for someone that's going to, or even a 2-hour council meeting works for somebody that's trying to cram it in on their lunch hour. So I'm just saying, I think previous councils settled on this time and date, and I think it works well. So we'll have a vote on it if you want to have further discussion about it, but I don't see moving it having any real effect or real improvement over what we've got now.
I'm just trying to think futuristically, John. Historically, your councils were largely made up of retirees, and you tend to see a lot of younger people now trying to juggle work duties, family duties, children duties, and wherewithal, and it gets harder and harder. And I'm just trying to think futuristically who's going to take my spot and open it up so we have a larger playing field, more inclusiveness in our city council.
No offense, they've been doing that for years. They've been doing that for years. They've been juggling. They juggle kids' activities. They juggle all their other financial needs, their banking needs, everything else. People have been doing that for years. So I understand what you're trying to say, but I just don't think that's where you're really going to solve the dilemma of why people don't run. So.
Like I said, I'm fine, you know, have my 2 cents, so thank you.
Anybody else? Robert?
I'm comfortable.
Matt, you
We
good?
Had our say.
Okay. All right, are we ready to move on then? Okay, number 5, golf cart ATV on city streets presentation. Chief?
Good evening, council. I know that the city manager, as well as a couple of you, had been approached by at least one citizen and possibly more than one about golf carts or other all-terrain vehicles being used on city streets. City manager asked me to put together a presentation to try and address some of those questions and see if this is something that you wish to pursue moving on. According to the DNR, they term all those vehicles as OHVs or off-highway vehicles, which is what we'll refer to as we move on. A UTV is a utility terrain vehicle that'll be in comparison to an ATV, which we'll get to next. The 2 pictures that you see on the right are examples of UTVs. Obviously, everybody's going to have their own definition of what these type of vehicles are capable of or what they're designed for. UTVs are specifically that, they're a utility vehicle. Conversely, an ATV or an all-terrain vehicle, what sticks out to me is it's defined as a motorized off-highway vehicle, which also would be the DNR term as an OHV. Designed to be straddled by the operator in the middle, has the handlebars up front, 2 different types, one that'll seat an individual and type 2 that'll be used for an operator and a passenger. And then lastly would be a golf cart. Quite simply, a golf cart is a cart for wheeling a golf bag around a golf course. Now, I know that there is one golf cart in town that I'm aware of that is DOT registered. It has been inspected by the DOT, it has been certified by the DOT, and is equipped as a street legal vehicle and registered through the DOT. So if you see that vehicle moving around, there is a single plated vehicle in Burlington that has fit DOT specifications, which I believe is probably one of the reasons this was brought forward. Most of the reference that we use will be to the DNR. Golf carts are not required to be registered as DOT legal vehicles. If you utilize either an ATV or a UTV, the DNR requires that you register it with them. For purposes of this presentation, roadway will be a highway traveled portion designed or ordinarily used for vehicular travel. I'm not going to bore you with everything that the DNR says. However, there are a couple of things that are necessary to be pointed out. Off-highway vehicles are not utilized for speeds in excess of 35 miles per hour. Most golf carts will not go in excess of 25 miles per hour, as they have the regulator that prohibits that. Obviously, the one I mentioned earlier will go in excess of 40 miles per hour, but that has been DOT approved. ATVs, UTVs, generally utilized for off-road county roads, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. In addition to that, it's more utilized on the farm. 321-234A is the Motor Vehicle Code of Iowa that specifically references ATVs. I won't bother to bore you with everything, but in a nutshell, it says that you're not going to operate them on a highway with the exception of one special provision, and I will reference that here moving forward. That special provision is section 321I of the Iowa Code. What that means is the city manager, in conjunction with the city council, can approve an ATV or a UTV for use on city streets. They can specify that on certain streets, they can specify that in certain areas of town, but it can be approved by both the council and the city manager. Golf cart operation on city streets is prohibited with the exception of moving from one area to another across a primary road extension. Examples of primary road extensions: Sunnyside, Mount Pleasant, Division, West Avenue. I will use Sunnyside as my example. Those people that live on Sunnyside within proximity to the golf course legally would be allowed to travel across Sunnyside from their residence in order to get to the golf course, whereas they would not be able to drive east and west on Sunnyside itself. When the citizen made contact with the city manager, that individual made a reference to these communities as communities that allow golf carts on their streets. As I had conversations with the city manager and a couple other people in city government, they asked me to compare apples to apples, and by that they meant they wanted comparisons of other comparable cities to our populations. The references that I'll make here to the cities that were provided by the citizen, the two largest being Fort Madison and Mount Pleasant. Fort Madison allows the use of golf carts on their city streets without issue. Mount Pleasant allows the use of golf carts on their streets. However, within their city code, they have specific streets that they will allow that use on. So it is physically listed within that code as to where it can be used. The reason that I added the population, you'll see in the next slide, roughly or just over 29,000 people combined in all of those municipalities, and leading up to Burlington at 24,838. The population figures that I have here are based on the 2018 census. The comparable cities that would be similar in size to ours, obviously Muscatine, Ottumwa, Clinton, Marshalltown, Mason City, and Bettendorf. Listing the populations from least to greatest, with Burlington approximately in the middle. As you move over to the right, ATV and UTV, where I have the word no, is that they are not allowed in their city and on their city street. Ottumwa, no. Burlington, we don't allow ATVs or UTVs, but with respect to golf courts, we abide by state code, which means we will allow those golf carts to travel across a city street, but not using it as a primary thoroughfare. Clinton, they allow ATVs on their streets. However, they allow them with provisions that they abide by state code and only use them during snow removal times. So they will allow ATVs and UTVs to put blades on their vehicles and utilize them during wintertime. Golf courts not allowed. Marshalltown has a no to the ATV, UTV, and abides by state code for the golf cart. You see Mason City, they make the differentiation between all-terrain vehicles and utility vehicles, obviously allowing the utility vehicles for snow removal. And Bettendorf abides by state code for both types. Just a couple of statistics relating to ATV and golf cart accidents. The reason that they are so great is, and I know the argument is going to be motorcycles have probably less protection on them than ATVs or UTVs. The difference between ATVs, UTVs, and golf carts, they don't have the opportunity or the ability to turn on a dime, so to speak. They don't have the radius, they don't have the quickness, the evasive ability that a motorcycle would have, which leads to more trips to the emergency room in these type of vehicles. Another example, even if you have helmets on or other type of protection, again, they're the golf carts traveling at a speed of less than 20 miles an hour. They just don't have the ability to get out of the way as maybe a motorcycle would. That is in a nutshell. I realize I ran through it quickly, but in an effort to ensure that it was presented to you and offer you the option between you and the city manager, you do have the ability to create it so that specific streets can be used, or you can leave it as is with relation to state code. Questions I can answer.
So I guess I'll start it off. So I guess my issue, I don't necessarily think that we should allow golf courts. And I don't necessarily think that we should allow ATVs and UTVs. It doesn't have a lot to do with the fact that they can't get out of the way. I guess I wouldn't necessarily agree with that 100% because I think they are more mobile than they probably used to be. I've driven a UTV quite a bit. It's not a vehicle and it doesn't have the safety stuff, but then neither does a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. So I guess that probably falls in that same boat. For me, it has to do with more impeding of traffic. They don't typically have the speed. So if we give permission for people to drive down a city street in Burlington, and they want to go down Division, but they're impeding for 2 lanes of traffic or whatever, I think that would create more congestion, which could cause an accident. I would, however, be okay with allowing UTVs and ATVs during snow events, just like Clinton has. I think there's some value there. I think people do use them for snow removal, and it would make sense to do it. At the end of the day, if we have a large snow event, we already see people use them in most neighborhoods because they for some people, that's their only way of getting around. if there's a snow event. So I think that would be fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't have a problem with just opening it up blindly.
I would agree with the snow removal part. Personally, Shane Campbell and myself in 2007, we did soil testing. So we rode roughly 100 miles a week on four-wheelers. And I can tell you, if you ride one enough, that sometimes you hit an odd balance or do something weird, that one minute you're driving it and next minute you're sitting on the ground, not even realizing that you popped off of it. A four-wheeler is not a secure vehicle. The UTVs might be a little different, but there's so much more risk because the tires are different. You just bounce a little more. But yeah, and Shane could probably back me up on that. There's just times that you just have an accident like driving normal. I would not want to see them on the streets. I want to have somebody hit a bump and then pop off and then get hit by a car or overturn it or have, as safe as they can be. I think there's a lot of risk there that I don't want to be involved with. But with snow removal, I've toyed around with the idea myself of getting one to get the snow out of my driveway and when you get the plows come by and push all the snow back into your driveway, it'd be nice to just push it off to the curb or back up in the yard. So I would be okay with that. I'm not sure the person that emailed us that they're recreationally wanting to ride around town on it, but I'm going to say no.
Yeah, to your end, with reference to the soil testing that you did, that's provided for in the code, agriculture and items like that, so you are covered in there. Just as an aside, a lot of counties allow them on county roads simply because that's what those type of vehicles are designed for.
Yeah, well, even driving from one field to the next, even on a little patch of gravel, sometimes if you've been on that four-wheeler a while and it's starting to get hot, I think it's sketchy, man. Yeah.
Well, we hear so much about distracted drivers these days. Just a second, John. We hear so much about distracted drivers these days. Hey, stop laughing. I see that the car ATV accidents are up a whopping 50%. Makes me really nervous, really hesitant to make something like this, at risk in our town. But I think for snow removal, I'm all on board for that. John, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. I can't see because the follow-up, you guys are a few seconds behind. Yeah, I'm not for it, and strictly because of the population. I mean, I understand some of those smaller towns, when you get a town of 1,200 people and you're okay on a county road, that's one thing. But, Burlington is 25,000 people. I just think that we're asking for trouble allowing those vehicles on our street as far as accidents go, and I'm just not for it. Now, I could see my way to a state code issuance for snow events like it said, or a state code crossing a road from one property to the next, but not using the road for normal thoroughfares. So, yeah, that's where I would be at. That's why we didn't pursue it last time, is because of the same thing. And I'm glad, Chief, that you did a size by size comparison, because it's not fair to compare a town like, a smaller town of 500, 600, 1,500 people to what we have going on in our town.
So do we have a consensus? So do we have a consensus to change the code to allow for ATV, UTVs during snow events?
I think we do for the snow events, but not for
Do you?
Yeah.
just recreational use.
I think there's 3 yeses for that here.
I can work on
John said he could get there, and obviously we don't know what Bill looks like, but that gives you an idea of kind of what we would consider.
I'll get started on it.
Okay, thank you very much. And then moving on, number 6, traffic flow between Edward Stone Middle School.
So it's probably been a month more now, was addressed some concerns about the traffic flow on Willow around the Edward Stone Middle School. Since then, I've had discussion with the transportation director at the time, Alan Mahaffey, and then the principal, Angie Butler, at the school, and we've talked about kind of the flow of traffic around that area. Kind of first to give you kind of a heads up of how things are done. They don't allow parking on Willow. There's no signs there, but I know that there's school staff out there that inform parents that it is no parking. And then thanks to the SRO at the school They help direct some traffic. But as the school buses come in, they enter into that northern parking lot with the cul-de-sac at the end of it. They go in there and they drop off the kids, and then they cycle back out. School staff or the SRO help guide those buses back out because they do take quite a bit of turning radius to get out of that roadway. And so I know that at times it potentially could back up traffic, but ultimately I think it helps get those school buses out of there. And then beyond the short delay of holding back the traffic, I think it flows fairly well from what I've had discussions with them. I don't know if you had any comment on that other than what I just said. So I would hate to make any sort of alterations to with traffic control devices, either stop signs or one ways, because of a 5-minute window in the morning and at night, with a little bit of congestion. The only other item that I kind of had looked at for discussion, if you could pull me up north to West Avenue. At times I do notice that there are some backups on Willow for traffic that is trying to turn left onto West Avenue. And I know in the past we'd had a conversation about some pedestrian access there. So I wanted to at least bring up or address the idea of putting a traffic signal in there. I think that the stacking on West Avenue could back up and cause some traffic problems either on Terrace or on, I think it's Easy Street. Yeah. And you're looking at a fairly sizable investment of that, $100,000 to $150,000. We do have 2 poles on West Avenue, but you need to invest in a third to be able to get that other leg. And then you'd also have to install and pay for programming and detection and whatnot. So you're still looking at a fairly sizable investment for some traffic control there. So I guess I just wanted to gauge conversation on that. So I will leave that up to you guys.
Okay, input? Comments?
So I had a citizen, and Nick and I talked about this a while back. I had a couple of citizens actually talk to me about this issue, the issue that they have with trying to make it through Willow, whether it's dropping kids off, in large part because, so buses pull in, and then as buses try to pull out, they end up blocking the road there, the Willow, that northern area, to try and let traffic make its way through. Well, as Nick already alluded to, the lack of traffic lights on West Avenue caused that traffic to back up during congested times, which just creates more congestion in the area. The only idea that I had was creating a one-way kind of valve, for example, where traffic can only come in from one end and can only go out from one end on the stretch of road from Dill to Sequoia of Willow, just making so all the buses would come in off West Avenue, turn in there, and then they would all turn right instead of trying to turn left.
And the school buses are not to go left on Willow and then go out onto West Avenue. They're supposed to go right.
Okay. I don't
They're
know.
supposed to take rights to go right out, and then right out onto Mason. So I also talked to Mrs. Butler about making it one way, and she said that would actually make things a lot worse from her perspective on traffic flow. And can you zoom out a little bit, Derek? So I do think that also there will be some traffic improvements over time.
Yeah.
For one, we have made the connection over to Aspen, which I think has actually improved things for people to want to get out of there. But as the development in the lower quadrant there behind, right next to where Dill will be, I think that will offer an offshoot valve down Dill and then north to Horizon. So if people are wanting to turn right onto West Avenue or something, I think that will allow some relief of the exodus of traffic.
One thing I was going to ask you, and I'm glad you brought that up because I had already considered that. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is, would it make more sense instead of investing money in mast arms for West Avenue to invest money in the connection of Dill? So if I remember the specs and plans for the complex that's being built, there's a curve there that connects Horizon to Dill, and then there's also that also runs through and eventually connects up to
Like Gilbert.
Gilbert, which is the Messiah.
Yeah, those are very future plans, but ultimately,
But-
I mean, it
But
could
instead
be
of
done.
taking several hundred, or whatever it's gonna take, $100,000, $150,000 and putting it in mast arms, would it make some more sense to just make that connection now and create another valve for traffic to be able to get out of there? Because now you'd have two enter and exit control, or entrances and exits off of Mason, and you would end up having two off of West Avenue.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, you could build the road, but if they're planning on doing it as part of their development, I wouldn't spend the money on that.
I don't think they are.
I think the other problem you're gonna run into there is when you have a private owner to the other side that doesn't want a road going through yet at this point, and maybe in the future will.
You meant the empty lot that has no plans. You
were talking
about, you were.
Because they're running a road to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, could you pull out and then go east a little bit, Eric? I think you have troubles getting out. Well, he does lead to Hageman, but I don't know that you want people going that way across through Gilbert.
Well, but if I remember correctly, the plan that we have connects, is that Gilbert that runs north and south?
East-west.
Or no, okay, no. I'm talking about, what's the road?
I know it's not Chamberlain, is it? Cambridge.
Cambridge. Connecting Cambridge. Because if I remember the specs and plans that we saw for this plan years ago, Cambridge runs a little bit north and connects to that.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of that senior living was an eventual planned road project because they own both that parcel
I think they're
and then
gonna
the
finish
smaller
I
parcel.
think they're planning to finish what's supposed to be on their property.
But it's all ultimately on their property. They're gonna come into the east of Jim Kelly Drive.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, they're not, this lot here is not being developed, that's not gonna have any connections.
But the senior housing owns both that angled lot and then that smaller lot that they purchased from Sunrise West. And so they could make a connection to Jim Kelly or Cambridge Drive with a roadway.
Okay.
However, I don't think they had a planned connection through that way. It was coming through on the
I guess
side.
my point is I'd rather see us explore taking money instead of spending 100,000 or whatever it would be to put traffic control on West Avenue and try to figure out how to create another valve for traffic to get out of that area. And I think that would be the next obvious way to do that after they've done their project.
Any other comments?
The backup is caused by cars, not by buses, correct?
I'm sorry.
So the backup in traffic, the congestion is caused by cars, not
I think the
buses?
original complaint was caused by the buses, but I do see at times when everybody's coming at one time to drop off, there is some congestion at the Willow and West Avenue intersection.
But
but-
buses aren't using Willow to get to West Avenue. correct?
Yeah, I think my city buses do, but I don't think the school buses are supposed to. That was what I had
Okay,
gotten
so-
from a message.
Is there a way we could just ask the city buses to also use Mason Road? and
Since I'm in charge of them, I can tell them that, yes.
Well, would that alleviate some of that, you think?
I don't think it will. It's not the buses that are causing the problem.
Okay, so
At
that's
West
what-
Avenue and Willow, I think it's just mom and
Just
dad.
traffic. I
Just
mean,
a peak
it's like
time.
that at every school right now. Have you been on Sunnyside when the other middle schools let out?
Oh, yeah. It's
People
nuts.
are backed up clear to Roosevelt one way and you can't get out the other way. It's difficult, and especially if people won't control their speed in the school zone, which we'll talk about another day. But I would just ask people to be considerate about traffic when your kids are getting out of school. Just let a car out and it'll fix itself. So maybe just be a little more considerate of the people around you.
Thank you, Nick. And then we have some appointments. Do I read each of those, Jim? Sure. So the Construction Board of Appeals, Commission member Cynthia Larson's term expires of the 19th of October, so she's requested to be reappointed to a new 3-year term, which will expire of 1 year from October 19th. So we welcome and applaud Cynthia's help on the Construction Board of Appeals. Economic Development Advisory Board, Commission member Dennis Fitzgibbon's term expired in July, and it's requested that he serve another 3-year term, and we welcome his support and attendantship on that Economic Development Board. Riverfront Advisory Committee, Charles E. Walsh, terms expired the 20th of October, and the council has considered appointing Charlie Walsh to a 3-year term. Welcome back, Charlie. And Zoning Board of Adjustments, Commission member Connor Brakeville's term expired October 15th, and council has considered reappointing Connor to a new 5-year term, which will expire October 15th, 2025. So, thank you. Do we have any comments from staff?
I might bring this up again later, but I reached out to some parents and some other people that have concerns about speeding in school zones. I just kind of put something on Facebook to see if I'm overly sensitive to it or hyper aware because I have kids in school, or if it's just me, but there seems to be a large amount of people that go faster than they should in a school zone, or if you're doing 20, they're right in your rear end. So, I'm considering looking at options to alleviate that because it's a concern of mine. I don't want to be on a council that has a kid get hit by a car or an accident in front of a school because I didn't speak up and say something about it. So, other than that, it's the only real concern I have right now. Stuff I'm seeing in the community, and I think everybody's, wearing their masks and doing their, protecting themselves from COVID. We're in a difficult time, guys. I just keep doing what you do and just be safe. And I'm looking forward to trick or treat this weekend. I want to take the girls out and have some fun. There's Girls on the Run is doing their 5K
Yes.
Saturday morning. I'm trying to figure out a way to get out of work early enough to go run, whether I'm in my work boots or what. So, there's still stuff that we can do to enjoy and have a good time through the holidays. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Matt?
Nope.
Okay. How about Eric? Don? Jim?
Former PD building actually got through closing. It's accomplished. It's no longer part of our structure, so.
Yay.
Reminder, next week, notice has already gone out that there's an exempt session for the council. That will be here at 4:30. Then we'll have the regular council meeting down at the auditorium. So we're making it as difficult as we can, but we're also trying to
Thank
figure
you,
out how
Jim.
to, the other site is not necessarily the best site to try to do a closed session at. So trying to make the dynamics work for the two, it'll be entertaining, I'm sure. It's going to be a little bit of, I think there's been some stress over trying to make all those arrangements work, and they've had to make a couple of adjustments with what their original plan was. But we do have plans for open meeting next Monday night, 5:30 at the auditorium. So it's nice to see us be able to get down to that structure. Eric, can you pull up the website for a sec? Should have had you pull it up first. One of the items that Stephanie had mentioned is that they had gotten under the finance department, if you go to departments, finance. Yeah, the tax increment financing development agreements, those rebate agreements. One thing that needs to get added, it shows the current development agreements. It has Burlington Crossings, Greater Burlington Partnerships, and Wine Guards. We still need to get the residential one out there. But the summary of all agreements, if you click on that one, a lot of the details, when they are approved, the length, how much, what's the not to exceed, where we're at in the process, how much has been paid or so far for the life of those agreements. You have that listed there. So you get a pretty good summary, and I wish I'd realized this was, well, she just got it put up today, but it would have been easier than going through all the agreements and trying to figure out how much we'd paid out so far. But anyone can take a look at these, and the document on the previous, or if you went back to that previous page, those current development agreements there, you can read through the authorizing documents too, for those that have a desire or an interest. Just wanted to make sure people had a chance to find that. That was all I had, so.
Nick, Stephanie, Chief?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
John?
Oh, John, do you have anything?
Still there?
I have nothing. Hopefully
Okay.
see y'all next week.
Okay, I just have something real quick before we conclude. My mother-in-law's been in hospice for the past 8 months, and probably tonight she's gonna earn her wing, so Godspeed, my friend, we'll miss you. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week.